Hello, grade 12 data students. Welcome to your first flipped class lesson. Please understand that you will be doing your lessons during the homework time, and then during your regular class time, you will be working on the assigned work. Please make sure that you always are prepared and are familiar with the important date sheet to make sure you know when we are in the lab and when we are in the classroom. So ladies and gentlemen, on my website you will find blank copies of my lesson, a copy of the video link, as well as the completed copy of the lesson with the answers included. Please feel free to use whichever method you need to best suit your own learning styles. To start off with, we're going to take a look at Unit 1, which is one variable statistics. So taking a look at statistics, today's lesson, lesson 1.1, types of data and stem plots. Please refer to the handout either on the website or if you've printed it off, or just listen and make jot notes. It is your choice on how you want to create your notes. All right, so you have lots of options open. And again, this is going to be up to you to make your notes however you see fit. All right, so let's take a look at our first lesson here, class. Today we're going to take a look at some terminology, some types of data, and then probably introduce something new called stem plots. All right, so first of all, when we do any type of statistics, we've got to get the data. Okay, the data is the number crunching or your results from a survey, for example. Data, or singulars called datum, are facts or pieces of information, usually in the form of numbers. Okay, I could ask you how old you are. I could ask how tall you are. I could also ask, what's your favorite color. That's all different types of facts. Okay, and now I want to take a look at types of data. There are different ways to classify data, and it depends on which category you're looking for. And all of these will be mentioned down below in further slides. So we've got categorical versus numeric, nominal versus ordinal, continuous versus discrete, primary versus secondary, qualitative versus quantitative, and experimental versus observational data. So each one of these will be summarized down below. So let's take a look at the first one, categorical versus numeric. Categorical data is information that can be broken down into distinct categories. Two subgroups of the data are nominal and ordinal data. Okay, whereas numerical data is broken down into a number. Okay, so for example, categorical could be, what is your favorite color? So what is your I'll just use that, color. Okay, so your answers are going to be in words. Okay, whereas numerical data is, how tall are you? And that's going to give you a numeric answer. I didn't say if it had to be in feet or inches, but that's going to be your question. All right, so let's do a little question here. Classify each of the data as categorical or numeric. The country that a person was born in, well, that is categorical because it's going to be written in words. Okay, the weight of a person when they were born, that's numeric. Okay, the time of day when a person was born, that is numeric. And how healthy a person was when they were born. Well, that one depends. For example, it could be categorical if you checked off, for example, good, average, poor, if that was how it was selected. However, I could also argue that it could be numerical as well if it was based on a scale of 1 to 10. So it depends on how the question was asked. So that one's a little tricky. There's a little interpretation to it. You'd have to see the original question for which the data was collected. All right, let's take a look at our second category, folks. This is nominal versus ordinal. Okay, nominal data is organized by name, and there is no natural order. Okay, so example, Canada, US, Russia, Sweden. Okay, you should put them in alphabetical order. Ordinal data, folks, ladies and gentlemen, has natural order. So this is one of the ones you've probably seen on the anti-bullying survey where you strongly disagree, you agree, strongly agree, and strongly disagree. There is a distinct order here. So that's why it's called ordinal. Okay? Awesome. Let's take a look at our third category. Our third category of classifying data is either continuous or discrete. Continuous if you can take all possible data into a range, and the data is continuous. So when we have this, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be fractions, so you can have fractions and decimals when all information is allowed. So for example, how tall are you? You would use, this would be continuous data, okay? Whereas discrete data only takes into a finite number of values, usually integers. For example, number of credits, okay? You would have 3 or 4 credits or 3 or 4 courses this year, okay? There's not such thing as a half credit, or number of books on the shelf, okay? So this is what's called countable, so you count them. Okay, so just put down here, number of books on a shelf. Just think, you can't have 12.8 books on a shelf, okay? Whereas you could be 12.4 meters you could have ran, or something like that. Okay, so let's take a look here a bit more at continuous and discrete. Here's some examples. Okay, so for example, for continuous, the weight of cows and their value in dollars, and that's the amount of milk the cows produce, are all continuous. So lots of things in farming that use continuous data, whereas discrete data for farming, the number of cows, okay? And again, you can't have 12.2 cows, okay? You have 12 or 13, okay? Bottom line here for continuous versus discrete, okay, is the way you can tell if data is discrete. Ask yourself, is it possible for you to have fractions or decimals, okay? If the answer is yes, then it is continuous. Okay, if you're counting something like number of brothers or sisters you have, then you know it's discrete. All right, let's keep moving on, guys. Hope you're enjoying this. Okay. So let's do a quick test on continuous versus discrete. This is one of the biggest classifications I find in data that we have, because it tells you a different type of way to graph it. So make sure you've got this information down pat. So classify each set of data as discrete or continuous. The number of suitcases lost by an airline. Well, that is discrete, because you can't lose half a suitcase. Okay. The height of corn plants. Oh, that is continuous, because that can have decimals or fractions. The number of ears that a corn, number of ears of corn produced, that's discrete. Number of green M&Ms in a bag is discrete. And the time it takes for a car battery to die, that is continuous. All right. And one thing, ladies and gentlemen, the next classification, you're going to be doing 2 examples of this in your project, which I will explain if I haven't already, your summative project you'll be doing. You'll be collecting both primary and secondary data on a project, okay? It's called your summative project. Primary data, guys, is the original data collected by the researcher themselves. So for example, you're going to do a survey, you're going to survey some of your peers and collect data related to your topic that you're going to choose for your project. You're also going to research secondary data, and that's data that's collected by other sources. So you could look at StatsCan online, internet, universities collect other data, okay? So I would put down here StatsCan, because that's a good one to remember. You get the information from that. All right, so keep in mind you're going to be doing that with your project. Next one, qualitative versus quantitative. Qualitative is descriptions, usually in the form of text. Okay, whereas qualitative is numeric data. Okay, so when you think about qualitative, I want you to think of categorical data. Okay, whereas the other one is numeric. Okay. So qualitative data is often collected in an interview, observation, or case studies. Often qualitative data can be difficult to analyze because there's so many different answers. Okay. Whereas when you have quantitative data, it's often collected in surveys or experiments, and it's easier to analyze, but you may lose the meaning in the number. Okay. So we realize that quantitative is easier, and when you create your surveys, you want to make sure you have enough quantitative data questions presented in your survey. All right, number 6, experimental versus observational. Okay, so experimental data is data where the researcher manipulates differences between the subjects. Okay, whereas the observational data where the differences in the subjects are not manipulated. Okay, so it depends on how you ask a survey question. If you ask, say, Coke is my favorite pop, what's yours? That's got a little bit of manipulation to it. Whereas you just ask, what is your favorite pop? It's a little different story. Okay, so you got to be careful about watching that type of data when you're creating your surveys. All right, so that's all the different types of data classifications, folks. Let's go on to what's called STEM plots. It's a new way to organize data. I'm sure many of you have not seen this before. Okay, so STEM plots is also called a stem and leaf display, and that's written in the diagram because here's an example here where you break it down into the stem and the leaf, and it's used for numerical data in a visual way. Okay, so here's an example, ladies and gentlemen, of raw data. Make sure you put it in order. So place data in order before you create a STEM plot. Okay, and what you need to realize is that the leaf has the last digit, okay, and the stem has the ones in front of it. Okay, so for example, if I take a look at 51, I've got a 5 as my stem and 1 as my leaf. Okay, now important to know when you're setting up a stem and leaf, you start with your smallest number and you go all the way up your stem, increasing until you get to your last number. For example, you go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 13. Notice even in our raw data here, folks, there is no number 60 over here. You still need to include it, and you leave it blank that tells me there's no values. Okay, so it goes in numerical order, and the stem is out front and the leaf is the last decimal. Please note when you get to things like 113, the stem itself has 2 digits and the leaf has the 1 digit of the 3 and the 4. Okay, so again, to do a stem leaf plot, it needs to be in numerical order. Okay, and you still include, for example, even if there's nothing in the 60s, you still include the stem part, just the leaf is blank. Okay, and I want to give you a couple examples that come up in the homework as well. What if I had, for example, add 151 on there? Okay, please, ladies and gentlemen, realize that you have to put it again. So you would repeat it again. Okay, and if I gave you something like 160, please make sure that you put 16, and you have to put a 0 in the leaf in order to hold that spot. Okay? All right, so let's just do a quick summary here that you're going to place in chart in numerical order. So place in chart in numerical order, because sometimes it's not given in numerical order, so you got to put it in numerical order. Okay? Okay, if the number repeats, include it in the leaf each time. Okay, great. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are just about done our lesson. We're just going to introduce the homework, and I'm going to show you a little example of the homework. You're going to use the handout that I either gave you in class, or you can print it off the website for homework. But let's just flip to the next page. So for homework, okay, number 1, complete the types of data handout. Okay, so you're going to take a look at the handout. Although it says do not write on me, you can still write on it. Okay, and you're going to take a look at all the different scenarios that you have here. Okay? For each of the 6 pairs of data, find a graph, statement, or study that implies one of the 2 data types. So for example, number 2, categorical. You're looking for categorical versus numeric. You're going to say that, hey, categorical is my favorite color versus numeric, which is the temperature example that we have there. Okay. All right. And then I want you to, for example, the homework question is to complete the categories of, I apologize, let me back that up. For number 1, when it says to complete the data types, if I go, for example, here, I'm going to go for each graph, if you can, label all the different types of data. So for example, this is a categorical one because I see names for eye color as opposed to numbers. It's nominal, it's primary data, I'm guessing, because I think it's been collected. It's quantitative, and it's going to be an observation thing. So for each example, use as many words as possible to describe data. That was step 1. Step 2 is to go to each of your breakdown, each of your different categorical types, and for each one, find one graph that represents that so you know which they look like. And then the last one is to create a STEM plot for the following data. Okay, please note that this data is not in numerical order, so please make sure you put it in numerical order. You will do all of this homework, ladies and gentlemen, next class. So please don't please don't think that you have to do it right now. Your homework is now done because you're done with my lesson, and you will bring your work to class, and you'll be doing this in class the next day. Thank you, folks. Have a great day, and this now completes your very first flipped video lesson for data. Have a great day.